Shalom. I just read Isaiah 16. There are obvious parts that are clear to me, but can you explain the connection with Moab? I understand that Ruth was a Moabitess and that Yeshua's lineage is connected to her, but I don't know if this has anything to do with Isaiah 16. I don't have a good grasp on the other names and places in this chapter either. Please, if you have time to explain, or can you direct me to some other reading? Thank you.
Let me begin by giving you some guidelines when reading prophecies that is in the scriptures. This will help us to better appreciate the place and the time of these predictions. The prophecies of the Hebrew scriptures which deal with a certain people or country will usually have a double reference. Many will remember this graph that is on the screen. We can see this in what we may call a telescopic view of the prophets. The concept of double references teaches that for most of the prophets, their eschatology or view of the future was divided into their now and then. Certain prophecy point to the present time of the prophet, and part of it refers to the future. So in other words, a prophecy may have a partial fulfillment at the time of the prophet and may find its chief fulfillment in an event far distant, like unto the day of the Lord, the millennium, or the eternal state. Now, this is the case concerning Moab and Isaiah, and this is why many people perhaps cannot put the things together in there. While the prophecy was a warning for the Moabites about the coming Assyrian invasion, this you can see in Isaiah 16:10-14, the prophecy reaches the event on the day of the Lord, and it also, the whole prophecy that is dealt with the millennium when the Davidic line will be established. This we can see later on, we'll see in Isaiah 16:5. Now the verse says in Isaiah 65, we'll see it now, it says, "A throne will even be established in loving kindness, and a judge will sit on it in faithfulness in the tent of David. Moreover, I will seek justice to be prompt in righteousness." See that we are first brought to the time of Isaiah and the soon Assyrian invasion, but also to the Messianic times. So one might also ask, what does a Jewish prophet have to do with a foreign country, especially an enemy of Israel, like Moab? The Hebrew prophets were also seers for other nations, or at least for the remnant of these other nations, because they spoke to them many times. There is, by the way, a very touching passage in this portion of the book of Isaiah about Moab. It is in the chapter just before, in Isaiah 15:5, Isaiah says, "My heart will cry out for Moab." How can one speak like this when it comes to the enemies of his own people? How could Isaiah do such a thing after what they did to Israel? And we further read in Isaiah 16, verse 9, another testimony of Isaiah's pain for the Moabites, or the Moabites. There we read, "Therefore I will bewail the vine of Sibmah with the weeping of Jazer. I will drench you with my tears, O Heshbon and Eliah, for battle cries have fallen over your summer fruits and your harvests." You know, these names are for Moabites cities. But Isaiah is a true prophet of God, and he does not rejoice over the fall of anyone, not even over the enemies of Israel. On the contrary, he mourns for their suffering. Some may even have seen in these words a lack of patriotism. It is far from it. Both the Jewish prophet as well as the believers today in the Bible also are called to lay aside all earthly ties and to see the depth of sin and to announce the salvation we have in Yeshua. You know, sin knows no distinctions of race or nationality. Another question before we go into our study, another question that arises when reading these prophecies is this: how relevant is it for us today to be examining predictions and futures about nations which are long gone off the map, nations such as the Moabites, the Edomites, the Philistines, and other of that same category? to answer this question, one will find that while these nations have by name disappeared, their territories have kept very much the same spiritual perspective even after thousands of years. So we find in most cases in these same territories that same familiar hatred toward Israel. In that sense, these future judgments are for them as well. And so the future judgment are for those who would actually hate Israel and will be in these territories. You ask about books you can refer to and read to get a good grasp of end-time prophecy. I suggest a book written by Dwight Pentecost. It's called Things to Come. As for a good general commentary on prophecies and on the scriptures as a whole, I would recommend two-volume book. That is, it's Bible Knowledge Commentary by Zook and Valvert. Zook, Z-U-C-K.